Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From the Westin Harbour Castle Hotel in downtown Toronto, welcome to the Empire Club of Canada. For those of you just joining us through either our webcast or our podcast, welcome to the meeting. Before our distinguished speaker is introduced, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our head table guests. I would ask each guest to rise for a brief moment and be seated as your name is called. And I would ask the audience to refrain from applauding until the head table guests have all been introduced. Our head table guests, of course, the Honourable Kathleen Wynne, the Premier of Ontario. Mr. Michael Rencheck, President and Chief Executive Officer, Bruce Power. Mr. Paul Fogelin, Past President, Empire Club of Canada. Mr. Jean-François Dion, Bachelor of Commerce student, Global Management, Ted Rogers School of Management. We're so pleased you're here. Ms. Sue Vanderbent, Chief Executive Officer, Home Care Ontario, Director, Empire Club of Canada. Ms. Jane Routhwaite, President and Managing Partner of the Osborne Group. Mr. Kent Emerson, Associate Vice President, Municipal and Stakeholder Relations, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, First Vice President, Empire Club of Canada. Ms. Vanessa Foran, President and Chief Executive Officer, Asthma Canada. And Mr. Noble Chamar, direct from the airport where he's been in India, partner Castles Brock and Blackwell LLP, past president, Empire Club of Canada. My name is Barbara Jessen. I'm the president of Jessen and Company Communications and the president of the Empire Club of Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, your head table guests. Choosing a life in public office can't be easy. In these days of 24/7 expectations and full-on erosion of personal privacy, it's hard to imagine anyone choosing a political career. Yet our guest today, Ontario's 25th Premier, has not only embraced a life in public service, she has put up her hand for a second term. From her first political excursion as a teenager, when she joined her friends in challenging a rule that prevented women from wearing pants to school, Kathleen Wynne has sought out leadership. If there is one theme that has characterized her life in public office, it would have to be fairness. Life doesn't offer a level playing field, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to mold the landscape so that everyone shares in the opportunities and the bounty of our country. Fair is difficult. It means compromising, negotiating, and getting inside another's perspective, finding and sharing empathy. For Premier Wynne, the one sure path to access and opportunity has been public education, and she began her career as an activist on those issues. She first ran for office when her 3 children were still in school, driven by her passion for publicly funded education and her desire to give every child in Ontario the best possible start. Before becoming an MPP, she served as a trustee on the Toronto District School Board. She also led citizens groups for a number of grassroots community projects and played a major role as an organizer, facilitator, and mediator. She has championed fairness for Ontario's First Nations peoples, for our new immigrant groups, and she has consistently advocated for Ontario's LGBTQ community. Since taking office in 2013, Premier Wynne secured a historic national deal to improve retirement security by enhancing Canada Pension Plan, and more recently, she has taken a bold stand on minimum wage. Premier Wynne's plan for building Ontario up focuses on creating new opportunities for people and businesses and ensuring a fairer, more secure future for everyone in the province. Under her leadership, as Ontario regained its place as an economic engine of Canada, the Premier has worked to ensure the benefits of growth are shared evenly. Her government is making tuition free for hundreds of thousands of students and created 100,000 new childcare opportunities for working families. And early this year, Premier Wynne introduced a major change in OHIP to provide free prescription medication for young people in the province from birth until they turn 25. Measures These are all measures we can applaud. At a time of global change and uncertainty, Premier Wynne is unwavering in her support for a fair and open society. She has not chosen an easy path. It has at times been controversial. We can't always agree on everything. But the one thing we can all agree on is that Kathleen Wynne has put fairness above politics. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming this champion of ordinary people to the Empire Club podium, Premier Wynne.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much. It's very kind. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. It's always daunting when people stand up before you speak. It can only go downhill. Thank you, Barbara. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour, bonjour, Annie. It's great to be back at the Empire Club. Thank you very, very much to all of the board members who continue to create this forum. Thank you for doing that. It's a very important one. And I want to begin by just taking a moment to recognize that we're gathered on the traditional territory of many Indigenous people, and they date back countless generations. They were the first to live on this land, and they continue to help shape Ontario today, and I want to show my respect to all of them. Thank you. And I want to say to all of you, I had a moment to walk around and talk to some of you. I just want to thank you for all that you do. There are people here, all of you, who are playing such an important role in your communities. You are volunteers, you are business people, you are mums and uncles and dads and aunties, and you are strengthening communities. Some of you are elected representatives. Thank you so much for what you do. I'm going to talk about what government is doing and how I see the role of government today, but we can't do anything without the support from people on the front line. So thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Merci. Thank you. So the last time I was here at the Empire Club, I remember that we had a lot to talk about. The 2015 federal election was just a few days away. Neighbors and faith communities were banding together to sponsor thousands of Syrian refugees, and I know many of you in this room were part of that movement. The Jays had just ended their post-session drought and were about to give us some pretty exciting October baseball. It was a buzz. So the atmosphere here in Toronto and right across the country was pretty electric. You could feel the energy. And I took the opportunity at that time to talk about the importance of leadership and how critical it is for government to see the big picture, to identify the challenges that people are facing, and to fight for them by putting forward big ideas that will make a real difference in their lives. And I'm going to repeat something that I said then, and that is that government should not be timid. It must be bold. We should not shy away from challenges. We must confront them. Because if governments don't confront the challenges, if governments don't look to the future, then how can we expect anyone else to do that? Governments are elected to take that view. Cette approche prend du temps et demande effort et détermination. Ce n'est pas facile, mais c'est le seul moyen de réaliser de réels progrès. So today, I want to talk about the big challenges that we're facing as a society, and what we can do to ensure that in these very changeable times that people can still get ahead. I know that there are people who are unhappy. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how well the economy is doing and the position that we're in, but there are people who are really feeling unhappy and uncertain about what the future holds. And I believe that government has a vital role to play here, a vital role in creating more fairness and opportunity in our society. And I have always believed that. I formed a pretty strong opinion. Barbara talked about my first political action, which was wearing pants to school. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but you know, in 1966, it was a bit of a big deal. And I formed that strong opinion about the role of government and a few other things when I was growing up in Richmond Hill. I was the eldest of 4 girls, and we're sitting there in our birth order, as it happens, at the island, on the boardwalk at Centre Island. And at school, I saw people being left behind, including one of my little sisters. She was very ill as a baby. She had a learning disability. And in the 1950s and the 1960s, that typically meant that you were overlooked. There were no classes for kids with special needs. What having a pretty severe learning disability meant was that you were punished. You were failed and you were punished. That's what it meant. You were kind of forgotten and you were left behind. And I can remember that it was hard to watch what she went through. My parents were fierce advocates. They fought for solutions and services to help her. But what I learned is that solutions are much easier to find when government works with families. And as I grew up, I came to understand that when governments intentionally set out to create the conditions for people to succeed, to correct injustice, rather than just letting people fend for themselves, to fight for people rather than to divide them, that's actually what good government means. And of course, when I was growing up, I never imagined I would have the privilege of leading a government. Kids, you know, when I go to grade 5 classes or grade 10 classes, kids say, "Did you plan to be the premier?" No, I didn't plan to be the premier. That was not part of the plan. But now that I'm in this role as premier, I've been focused on building a fairer, better Ontario for everyone. It's why I'm in politics. And it starts with getting the fundamentals right. That means focusing on economic growth and on jobs and making investments where it makes the most sense and has the most impact. We've put billions of dollars into building and repairing our hospitals, roads, schools, transit systems, including expanding the subway to Vaughan with 6 new stops. And I know that Sandra Young-Racco is here from the Vaughan Council. Good things are happening in Vaughan, but all over the province that we've been doing this building. Today, after 5 years, the people of Ontario are seeing and they're experiencing the benefits of that plan that we're implementing. And at a time of uncertainty, our economy is doing relatively well, partly because of that investment. We're outpacing Canada, we're outpacing all the G7 countries and have done for the last 3 years. We balanced the budget this year for the first time since the recession. And more people are back at work. Our unemployment rate is at its lowest in almost 2 decades. And that means that an average of about 500 jobs were created every single day in 2017. So all of that's very good. But here's the thing. While we are very proud of all of that, and you should be too, because you are on the ground making those things happen, and while it shows that we're on the right track, the numbers do not tell the whole story. And it's what I referred to earlier, about people not feeling that. They don't feel it anymore. It's not like 40 years ago or 30 years ago where if there was that kind of growth and success, people would feel it in their day-to-day lives. The truth is that people in our province are struggling. They're anxious about the future. And that's something, that anxiety is something that I hear about a lot. Earlier this year, a woman named Lise wrote to me, and she lives just east of Ottawa. She has 2 sons, one's 22, one's 25, and they did not expect to be living at home in their 20s. But they can only find precarious work, part-time, minimum wage, no benefits. And I am sure that you know people who are in the same boat. This isn't what she imagined for them or what they imagined for themselves. And Lise said to me, she said, times have changed from when I was their age. It's very sad and it's frightening to say the least. And I agree with her. It is scary when what you expected to happen didn't happen, and when you don't know what is coming next. And there is no easy solution. There is no quick fix to what is a complex set of conditions. This is a new world with new challenges, and as I say, they're not simple. The pace of change is unlike anything we've seen before. And I know we can go back in history and we can look at times when there were previous industrial revolutions and there was a lot of change. But what's happening right now is unprecedented. And Thomas Friedman, in his book, Thank You for Being Late, writes about the way that change is accelerating so rapidly now that it's actually moving faster than our ability to absorb it, our ability to understand what it actually means. It's a provocative theory, but it makes me even more certain that in this time, government must step up, must tackle those big problems that go with this rapidly changing economy. If ever there was a time when government had a role to play, it's in an uncertain time like this. These are problems that people cannot solve by themselves. So, what that means is that every decision we make as a government has to come down to one thing. We have to ask who we're fighting for. Alors tout ce que nous faisons, chaque décision que nous prenons, définit en d'autres termes pour qui nous luttons. So, exactly who are we fighting for? We're fighting for hard-working men and women who want to retire with greater security. Barbara referenced this in her opening. We pushed hard for better pensions. We led the way here in Ontario. We led the way. And now the Improved Canada Pension Plan is going to pay out more in benefits to millions of retirees across the country. It's a good thing. And we are fighting for working families with kids. And that's why we made prescription drugs absolutely free for every person in Ontario under the age of 25. We call it OHIP Plus, and it's already making a world of difference to so many families across our province. In Ottawa, we recently heard from a woman named Amanda. Amanda has her own business. She's a fitness instructor. Her husband works a contract job, and they love what they do. But like a lot of people, they don't have any additional health benefits. Their daughter has type 1 diabetes, and that means insulin. It means test strips. And all of that adds up to about $6,000 a year to keep their daughter alive and healthy. And Amanda talked about standing in line at the pharmacy and wondering whether she had enough money in her bank account to pay for the drugs that her daughter needs. OHIP Plus has changed everything for Amanda's family. It means that Amanda can focus on her daughter and on her career and not trying to balance the cost of prescription drugs. So many families across the province can live their lives with a great burden lifted off their shoulders. And we're fighting for students who are trying to start a career or retraining for a new one. That's why we made college and university tuition absolutely free for more than 225,000 students who were struggling to pay for it. We're saying, if you get the grades, you get to go. These are men and women of all ages. It's a great thing. Sometimes we think about students in college and university as being kids who just came out of high school. But these are men and women of all ages. They are going to help us to seize the opportunities of this changing economy. And some of those adult learners who are going back to retrain, they bring a wealth of life experience that is going to be extremely helpful in this economy. I spoke last week with Renisha. She told me that she had always dreamed of going to college, but she never thought that she could afford it. She especially didn't think she could afford it because she's got 2 kids that she's taking care of. Her youngest is just a toddler, and the free tuition program has made Renisha's dream possible. She's studying community and justice services at Humber College, and she's getting 94%. She's like top of her class, and she wouldn't even be there if we hadn't put free tuition in place. And I asked her, I said to her, what do you want to do next? She's not sure. She was just full of energy when I was talking to her on the phone. She hasn't decided yet, and what she said was that there are so many options open to her that she didn't even know about. So she's gone into one program. She's not sure what she's going to do, but she is going to be successful. And the other conversation I had with her was the difference that it's making to her son. So she's got a toddler, and she's got a son who's in grade 10. And he's watching his mom do all of this. He's watching her succeed. And that means that post-secondary is absolutely within his reach, and he will not be facing the same barriers that she did. So this is intergenerational change that we are fostering by putting in place these supports. Imagine the talent that's being unlocked in Ontario. All the people who are going to be able to fulfill their dreams and therefore take part in the economy in a way that they would not have been able to do before. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing. We're fighting for the moms or the dads who work 2 jobs and are still struggling to make ends meet, no matter how hard they try. That's why we've raised the minimum wage to $14 an hour, and it's why we'll increase it again to $15 an hour next year. CBC did a story about people here in Ontario who earn the minimum wage. And the reporter went to a soup kitchen where traditionally you would find homeless people. But in recent times, what they've been finding is that they're serving more and more people who work minimum wage jobs. So just think about that. These are men and women who work 40 hours a week or more, and they still can't afford to eat. They have to go to the food bank. That's not acceptable to me, and I don't think it's acceptable to you either. In a province as prosperous as Ontario, people who work a full-time job should not have to worry where their next meal is coming from. So that's why we're raising the minimum wage. And it's why we're doing it with urgency. A fair wage cannot wait. You know, there have been many conversations about living wage for many years. We can't wait any longer. The time is now when the economy is doing as well as it is. And we're fighting for those working parents whose children are just starting out in the world. And that's why we're helping 100,000 more children access licensed childcare, so that parents can go back to work when they choose and more kids can have a great place to learn and grow. That's who we're fighting for. Our focus is on the people of this province, on their needs, on their priorities, on their goals. And even as those things continue to shift and change, as new realities emerge, we will be ready to respond. We'll be ready to fight for a fairer, better Ontario, no matter what the world throws our way. And the world does throw surprises our way, as you all know. Earlier this month, I was at a town hall meeting in Windsor, and as you can imagine, we talked about all the questions swirling around NAFTA. I told them, and I will always stand up for Ontario workers and businesses, especially in the face of U.S. protectionism. That is my job. And I believe in free trade. I believe in the importance of an updated NAFTA agreement because it supports good jobs for workers on both sides of the borders. That's exactly why I've met or spoken with nearly 40 U.S. governors now. Most of those have been Republican governors. We've talked about the benefits of our partnership. I will say that in every one of those conversations, and Philippe Couillard from Quebec and I were comparing notes just this week, not one of those conversations has led to a disagreement about how important NAFTA is. There is a strong understanding of how important NAFTA is. But I've also been clear that if any state takes actions to harm Ontario workers and businesses, that we would respond in kind, that we would make a proportional response. And that's why last week we tabled legislation which enables us to respond to the Buy American legislation that was introduced in New York and Texas. Nobody wants a trade war. But if the U.S. states insist on going down the Buy American route, then we have no choice but to respond. It's my job to fight for Ontario's people and businesses, and that's why I'm fiercely advocating for free trade and open procurement, and it's why I will not let others dismantle it without paying a price. That's the message that I've been taking to the states. I think it's safe to say that the NAFTA renegotiation is a fight that none of us would have predicted when I was last here. But as I said, as a government, we have to be ready for whatever comes our way. We have to look to the horizon. Oftentimes, it's our kids who help us to do that. One of the most frequent questions that I hear from young people when I go on campus or I go to high schools, one of the most frequent questions I hear about, I'm asked is, what is the government doing about climate change? It's an important question, and it may be that it's the most important question for the planet. We cannot ignore the reality of climate change. We cannot look the other way, and young people understand that. They know that we've messed up. They know that our generation and the previous generation didn't do everything that we should have done. And they are looking to us to at least get us on a footing of going in the right direction. And so that's why it matters that we've eliminated coal-fired power. It makes a difference to our air quality, and we've got the Asthma Association sitting right here. We can walk out of our doors, the air is clean. It matters to the health of our children, and it matters to the future. We have to prepare our province to thrive in a very different global economy. And we have to do it now. We cannot wait. It's upon us. Some people are concerned about the cost of taking action. But there is a far, far greater cost associated with doing nothing. It's why we've put a cap on pollution, because environmental destruction is not an acceptable cost of doing business. And on January 1st, we officially joined with Quebec and California in North America's largest carbon market. We chose this system because it provides the greatest reductions at the lowest cost, both to people and to businesses. And every dollar from the proceeds goes into improving public transit systems, retrofitting our hospitals and schools, helping people reduce their greenhouse gas emissions at home with free smart thermostats and rebates, and gets plowed back into communities to help everyone to reduce pollution. You cannot be serious about lowering emissions and fighting climate change without a price on carbon. It's just not possible. And those who pretend differently are simply being dishonest and trying to sidestep the issue. I look at the climate change issue not just as the Premier of Ontario, though. I look at it as a grandmother. It would be unfair and irresponsible to push the most pressing issue that we face onto the next generation. I can't look Olivia and Claire and Hugh, who are 8 and 6 and 4. I can't look them in the eye and say, you know what, while Grandma was Premier, she didn't do anything about climate change, because there were people who disagreed with what should be done. I cannot do that. It is my responsibility to say to them, you know what, kids, I did everything that I could, and then to pass the baton to them. So we're fighting for them, and we're doing it in a smart, sustainable way. As pollution has fallen in Ontario, our economy has grown, so we are on the right track. There's no denying it, though. This is a time of uncertainty and change in the world. I just spent 3 days in Washington. There is no doubt about uncertainty, my friends. It is an uncertain time. These are challenging times to govern, just as they're challenging times to be in business, or to be an educator, or to be a farmer, or to be an auto worker, or to work in home care. Whatever you are doing, it is an uncertain time. But if we do our job right, if we stick with our plan, then the people of Ontario will be able to look to the future, and they'll be able to look to the future not with fear and anxiety, but with the hope and the confidence that really have been trademarks of who we are as Ontarians and Canadians. Ontario is a very special place. When I meet with U.S. leaders, they admire what we've built here. They don't all agree with everything that we're doing. I'm meeting with a lot of Republican and Democratic leaders in the States. But they look at what we're doing, and they want to understand how we're building, how we're providing the supports that we are for people. They want to understand how we're doing more and not less for people, how we're talking honestly about what change means and accepting it on our terms. I truly believe that if there is anywhere that can figure out the best way to confront today's challenges, it's Ontario. It's in this room. It's us. It's here. It's in all of the beautiful 444 municipalities in this province. There are great ideas. There are people who want to work together. There are partnerships waiting to happen. And we are going to continue to work with all of the folks in this province who see that the future can be as bright as it can be. And I just want to thank you all for being here. Merci, Miguel. Thank you. Thank you. I'm okay. No, I'm okay. I've got my mic. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So there was some hand signals going on here. I'm going to take some questions. Were you guys coming to move the paddles or move the podium?
We'll bring the podium back after the Q&A.
Okay, all right. So I'm happy to take a few questions. I think there are some mic runners somewhere. Harvey's got a question, and it's going to be about housing, but that's why we love Harvey.
Thank you, Premier Wynne, and you read my mind. Thanks very much for your insightful, inspirational words about trying to bridge inequality in Ontario. And you know, one of the stories you mentioned around the minimum wage, that people are working 40 hours a week and trying to make ends meet, is that they're using food banks. And I think, frankly, one of the reasons they're using food banks is the enormous cost of finding an affordable place to live, particularly for some of the young people that you mentioned. You know, we applaud your government. You brought in some measures last April under the Fair Housing Plan. That said, the challenge is still enormous out there, particularly for low, modest income households. Some thoughts about other measures your government could do to add to the supply of affordable housing or increase affordability for those that are having trouble making ends meet? Particularly, we all know an election campaign is coming. So here's your opportunity.
Scoop my platform, right?
To let us know what you might be thinking of doing.
So let me just say, Harvey, that I absolutely get that when we look at the determinants of health, when we look at the factors that go into poverty reduction, housing is a huge part of that. So you're right, in our Fair Housing Plan, we did put in some supports. We brought rent control in for all buildings, not just the ones that were built before 1991, and that was a hard thing to do because, you know, it's something that's been contentious for many years, but we were just seeing too many exponential increases in rent. We're working with the federal government on the National Housing Plan so that there can be a direct support for building of more housing, and of which I know you want part of that to be co-op, and I totally agree with you. We need different models. We can't just build the way we've always built in the past, and we need new models. We're also moving on inclusionary zoning, and I think that municipalities having the ability to put in place an expectation that when there is building, there will be affordable housing, and we'll have mixed housing models. That's important. The last one I would just tackle is, you know, you talked about young people, and that's a huge concern. I also have a huge concern about people at the other end of the generation. So seniors, I don't think we have brought the discussion around housing for seniors and healthcare for seniors close enough together. They are intimately related, and so stay tuned as we work with all of the folks who are trying to provide better home care and at the same time provide housing options for people. So, you know, people who are in a bed in an acute care hospital when they should be in the community, but there isn't the right housing model for them. So we're working on that as well. That's the spectrum that we're working on. And thank you, Harvey, for all your support. Thank you. Over here. Yes.
Hello, thank you for your conversation. My name is Justin Hine. I'm the CEO of Rose Rocket, a small startup company here in Ontario, just down the road, 5-minute walk. I want to know your thoughts coming for Ontario in the next 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever you would like to use as a time window of hypergrowth and small companies. What are we doing well in Ontario? What needs to improve? And how are you going to help really a huge economic driver for this province?
So my understanding, and I am quite sure you know more about this than I do, and you could give me some advice, which I hope you will do. But I think there are a couple of things that we need to focus on. My understanding is that the sort of threshold of a business expanding, we don't necessarily support that commercialization, that next growth. I think we've gotten better on the startup, and we've got great incubation happening in the province, but we haven't necessarily helped businesses to grow and stay. So I think that's one of the things that we need to do. I think the other thing is we need to make sure that the people who are graduating from our post-secondary, that you continue to have the labor force that you need, and that labor force graduates with an understanding of entrepreneurialism and understanding of growing a business. And I think one of the things that we can do much better in this province is link education with the workforce. We have a number of great examples of that happening so that young people get exposed to a full range of opportunities early, but we've got a ways to go. And I think if we can keep that great, highly educated workforce that, quite frankly, is bringing businesses here, is helping to start terrific businesses, but we've got more to do to make that workforce even more ready for the 21st century, which is what you're talking about. Over here.
Hi, I'm Kim Moran with Children's Mental Health Ontario, and thank you so much for speaking about sort of the big changes that are happening to our children and what they're facing. One of the big accomplishments, I think, as a society we've made is to really reduce the stigma around mental health.
Right.
And I think that that's then brought so many kids and so many youth out to really sort of address mental health issues, which is really going to be positive for society as a whole over the long term. But I think you know that we really haven't had our service delivery system keep up with that demand.
Right.
And that's something that I'd really like to get your thoughts about, because you know from your background that when kids have mental health issues that aren't treated, it overflows into the classroom. So the teachers are really struggling with kids who really need treatment. They need help.
Absolutely.
That they can't access. And of course into our colleges and universities similarly, that kids really need to get the treatment as soon as they need it. So I just wanted to ask your comments on that issue.
So a couple of things on that. I said in my remarks that one of the most frequently asked questions I get is about climate change. Probably the number one question I get asked, and I just did a college and university campus tour, the number one question is about mental health. And it's exactly as you have said. The terrific awareness campaigns that have happened, and it is so important because we all know that as recently as 10, 15 years ago, this conversation was not as robust as it is now, and people were not talking about early intervention and early identification. So it is a huge concern. Let me just step back for 1 second and say that, you know, people say to me, you're doing a lot of things. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. What are you really focused on? What do you really want to get done? And my response to that is, there's a lot that needs doing. You know, that's why the list is long. There are a lot of concerns. I mean, I look around this room. There aren't just 3 things that you're concerned about. There are 50 things that you're concerned about. And so when people say, you know, you've done a lot, my response is, so ask a parent of a kid with mental health issues if we've done too much. The answer is no. The answer is there's still more to do. So, you know, what I will say to you is we get that. We have put more money, we've put millions more into mental health services, but we have not finished by any stretch of the imagination. You know that the Minister of Health is working on a plan. You know that things like mental health hubs, that we're trying to bring an interdisciplinary approach to this, because there isn't just one practitioner who needs to be involved. Kids need a wraparound of services. We need to make sure that schools have the supports that they need. We cannot expect teachers to be mental health professionals. It's not fair. They are educating our kids. They have a different job, and they need to be supported both in the school and in the community. So we know that there is more to be done. The other challenge is the navigation. And I know when I'm on a campus or talking to educators that what happens in the community isn't necessarily connected to the campus or to the school. And so we need to make sure that there is a way better coordination of services, and that is, again, top of mind for the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care. So stay tuned. We're going to do more. Okay.
Premier.
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Sarah Diamond, President, OCAD University. Thank you very much for the free tuition. The impacts in the college and university sector, as you have said, are really profound. Every challenge you've described requires the talent of graduates from colleges and universities.
Correct.
And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about how you see investment in post-secondary education moving forward. In your next government.
In other words, when will there be more?
Yeah, when
Yes.
will there be more? You've done some great work in creating.
You know what, Sarah, let
funding
me just say that we will never back away from the need to continue investing in post-secondary. And I will just broaden that to say that that includes skilled trades. So it includes colleges, it includes universities, and it includes skilled trades because, again, there's an area where I hear from business all the time, I'm looking for 20 welders, I'm looking for millwrights, I'm looking for tool and die. And I visited an amazing place in, okay, staff, help me, where was I? St. Clair College, right? I was at St. Clair College, and this program had drawn young people from a whole bunch of backgrounds. There was a young guy with a Bachelor of Science degree who was learning computer skills on the shop floor so that he could go into an apprenticeship. He was learning millwrighting, he was doing tool and die, and he was going to go into an apprenticeship. So that kind of opportunity has to be available to kids across the province. So we're going to continue to invest, and I know that each institution has a vision and a dream of where they want to go, and part of our job is to work with all of them and make sure that we've got the right mix of opportunities for kids, whether they live in the north, whether they live in the south part of the southwest, southeast part of the province, that they have access somewhere in the jurisdiction, they have access to the right kind of education for them, and that they can transfer those skills and credits from one institution to another, because that's one of the challenges that we have faced as well. So we're going to continue to work and invest and continue that advantage, because when I go to China or India or Vietnam, as I was just there this fall, when I go to those countries, they look to us for our labor force. They bring business here, they want to invest here, they want to expand their businesses here and create jobs because of our highly educated workforce. So I know it's our advantage, and it's exactly why when we put in the proposal for the Amazon bid, and you know there may be different feelings about this, but we did not put on the table a whole lot of money. What we put on the table was our highly educated workforce, and we're the only Canadian province, the only Canadian city that was on that list of 20. So we're on the right track. You good? I'm getting the hook. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me. Have a wonderful afternoon. Merci. Miigwech.
Please welcome Vanessa Foran to thank our speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the Empire Club for hosting this event, and a very special thank you to the Premier for taking the time to share her thoughts on where we are as a province and what opportunities lie ahead. I would also like to thank all the people in the room who dedicate their time and effort to public service. These are the people who are doing all they can to make Ontario a better place to live and to raise a family. As a province, we have been making important long-term decisions that have impacted the quality of the air that we breathe and have reduced our carbon footprint. This has helped to improve the health of Ontario's most vulnerable citizens, including those who live with asthma and other respiratory conditions. Ontario has been a global leader in reducing GHG emissions by eliminating our reliance on coal-fired electricity generation and replacing it with non-emitting hydro and nuclear energy. As a province, we have embraced this leadership role as innovators in the new low-carbon economy, and it's vitally important that we remain committed to continuing on this path to a cleaner world. Every step we take to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels is a positive step forward to cleaner air in this province. As we reduce carbon emissions, we increase the quality of life for our residents, especially those with asthma and lung issues. On behalf of Asthma Canada, I would like to once again thank the Premier for joining us today and for her continued support of clean air policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vanessa, and I apologize on behalf of everyone for that dull roar. A sincere thank you to our sponsors, Bruce Power and Home Care Ontario, for making this event possible. The Empire Club of Canada is a not-for-profit, and we simply couldn't do these events without the generous support of sponsors like you. We're very, very grateful. I'd also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, for webcasting today's event to thousands of viewers around the world. And also a particular thank you to our sponsors, the National Post, and most especially to Toronto Life, our newest sponsor. We're just delighted with this partnership, and we look forward to doing many activities with you. Although our club has been around since 1903, we are active on social media, so please follow us on Twitter at Empire_Club and visit us online at www.empireclub.org. You can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Finally, please join us again at our next event on March the 1st, that's this Thursday, with Minister Bill Morneau, fresh off his budget, to talk to us about it at the Royal York Hotel. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and this meeting is now adjourned.